There's a storm brewing outside right now, and I don't know if it's tied in with me watching Berserk, but it seems fitting. Hey, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 8 of Berserk. 8 is my lucky number, so I poured myself a big glass of hot coffee. It's like kind of damp and not chilly, but just like a damp, rainy day outside, and it's gloomy. So I was like, I want to watch Berserk, so here we are. But I realized with the last episode, and people have probably commented on it at this point, I've probably addressed it in the comments, but I didn't get it. I said in last week's reaction that I was going to talk about how Casca and Guts were like Asuka and Shinji from Neon Genesis, and I didn't really get a chance to talk about it. I kind of got bogged down with that hour-plus discussion that happened, but I wanted to talk about it here briefly. I don't really see as much comparison of Asuka's character with Casca in this so far, as their characters go. I feel like there definitely is some animosity between Guts and Casca that's similar to Asuka and Shinji's animosity, but without spoiling anything, I know a lot of people ship Asuka and Shinji together in Neon Genesis. I kind of didn't in that series, and in here I see the potential in myself to ship Casca and Guts. I feel like they're very similar, but I'm just not there yet. We're getting the foundation. Last week's episode was a really good foundation for Casca and Guts' relationship if they can talk and develop that relationship, and that's kind of a thing in Neon Genesis. Communication becomes a big burden for some of the characters, and I feel like whereas I can't find a lot of similarities between Casca and Asuka at this point, we don't know a lot about Casca's backstory like you do with Asuka by the time the series ends. I feel like with Guts and Shinji, on the other hand, there is a lot of similarity. They both have negligent father figures. They both are very unsure of themselves. They're both not talkative characters, but are extremely emotive and expressive in their emotions, especially on their face. And both of them kind of struggle to find their place within the society that they are both kind of plopped into. Like Shinji has a lot of trouble dealing with the society that he's in. Same with Guts. So I can definitely see a lot more similarity between Guts and Shinji than Asuka and Casca. But again, I know a lot more about Asuka's character than I do Casca's. And maybe when the truth or backstory about their characters comes out, that will change. But I don't know. Just depends on what we get, right? So, again, 8 is my lucky number. I'm not doing the rule of 8 with Berserk because there's 25 episodes. So it can't really quite work out that way. But 8 is always usually a good episode. Usually it's a decent episode, right? You're just entering into that second act. And so I'm really curious what we're going to get, y'all. So I'm going to give my dog this toy and hope that they go lay down. Probably not. And I'm going to take another sip of coffee and we're going to start. When we last left off, old Adon's castle was the castle we needed to storm. And it seems like it's going to be a harder task than we may have originally thought. But it's look at these guys. It's our mercenary band of the Hawk. They surely can handle this, right? Against Adon, right? We'll see. We'll see. But we're going to start episode 8 of Berserk and see what we get. And we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this, y'all. Well, that was a fun episode. My 8's my lucky number, and it's not let me down. So this episode was really good. A very seemingly straightforward episode as far as just we came in, we saw, we conquered, we moved on up the court, and Julius is about done with everything. So the one thing that stands out that I can finally confirm, and I'm really happy to confirm, and I'm sure it's been driving you all crazy because I've been recording ahead, is that Bosco and Julius are not the same person. I'm thinking now that going back to the episode, I'm sure that everyone in episode 6 was like, what? Why would you think they're the same? I swear, their character designs look similar. It looked like Bosco looks like Julius, but without the hair. And I do think, though, that in this episode, they distinctly animated Julius. Maybe it's because Julius and Bosco were in the dark the whole time. They kind of looked similar. But Bosco and Julius definitely look different at this point. And I'm like, okay, they are different people. I'm glad that crazy theory can be put to rest. I'm sure by the Discord and stuff will be like, Romania, look. We love your theory crafting, but this was too much. So no, I'm glad that they are not the same person. Good. We can sell that out of here. But there's some interesting things going on. Do I think Griffith is getting poisoned in the woods? No, because we know from the first episode he becomes king. So we're like, no, he's not going to get poisoned. Although that does not mean that someone else in the court or in the band of the White Hawk might not get poisoned as well. Pippin could get poisoned, or Rickard, or, Casca could get hit by the arrow. Somebody could end up getting poisoned. And maybe it's Guts. And maybe that's how Guts ends up away from all the others. He gets poisoned and then he runs into whatever gives him the brand. We don't know. Something's going to go down in the woods. If it turns out the band of the Hawk is in fact going on the hunt, somebody is going to... And at this point, the crazy thing is, I guess we should probably wait and talk about it when we get to that scene in the episode. The crazy thing is that old Humpty Dumpty here, whoever he is, he may be like controlling fate in this situation as well, which we'll talk about controlling fate because that's the big theme in this episode and this series as a whole. But the idea that because the one guy, Humpty Dumpty, brought it up, now Julius is going to be like, well, come on. No, Band of the Hawk, you come on the hunt with us, the White Dragons. Come on, we'll share it together. And causes this whole thing to go down when maybe it wasn't even being considered to begin with. Maybe it wasn't even something, because it seems like the one guy, I'm going to call him Humpty Dumpty till we get a name on him. It seems like Humpty Dumpty had the idea of the poison arrow. He wants Griffith gone just as much as Julius because he probably sees Griffith as a threat to his position. So he's like, Griffith needs to go. Because I would not be surprised, as trusting as the king is, as compassionate, as kind-hearted as the king seems, he probably has let some corrupt... I mean, he's got this guy on the court, right? So there's probably been some corruption on the court, some underhanded stuff. And he's like, if Griffith's on the court, he's going to see right through this. And Julius is kind of dumb, so we can pull the wool over his eyes. But if Griffith's on the court and is a general, that's a problem. Because he probably will see through it, and he'll probably call it out. And the king will probably act upon it because the king is in such good graces with him. So he's probably thinking, we got to get him out of here and quit him from rising up the ranks. Because it's only episode 8. It is only episode 8, and he is moving on up. He is like filing through the ranks. He's like just boom, boom, boom. We were mercenary, we're knight, and now we're a count. Like, Count Griffith, which Count does not seem like a title worthy of him. I'm glad he's aiming higher. King Griffith sounds a lot better than Count Griffith. But I'm like, yeah, and he could be General Griffith next. So that's a problem for these guys. So he's like, I'm sure that the Humpty Dumpty guy was like, well, let's just poison him on. Well, there'll be an unfortunate accident in the woods, and we'll just be done with the matter. It won't get blamed on anybody. It won't cause any wars, no civil unrest. We'll just be like, oh no, an unfortunate accident happened to Griffith. Oh well, and then move on with our lives. That's what he proposed to Julius. And Julius, who seems very easy to manipulate, is all like, yes, this is perfect. This will get all of our agendas solved. This will get... And, Julius, to be right, Julius and the others, they kind of have a right to fear Griffith because Griffith is an outsider. He is not one for tradition. He could upend the entire society of the entire kingdom. And the thing that's so fascinating is they're not really wrong to be wary of that, because even though tradition and status quo can be a very, very bad thing, right? In some regards, it's not, it depends on bad for who, I guess, is the better thing, right? Because it's like, it's been beneficial, obviously, to the upper court, but it's kind of one of those scenarios of, well, if the people aren't, in civil unrest about it, is a new order necessarily a good thing? Like, it may sound all fresh and new, but if the Midlands are at peace right now, they are at war against the Tudors, but if the civil population, for the most part, is fine, then uprooting the establishment and getting a whole new king may not be a good thing. And we see from episode 1 that the people are in civil unrest. They're like, oh, things got dark once Griffith took over. Kind of seems like that's the case, right? That things didn't get better when he became king, but he wanted to become king, so here we are. And Griffith gets what he wants. So that was my whole thing at the end of the reaction. I was like, oh, we're planning like a Robert Baratheon, Game of Thrones. He's going to get poisoned in the woods. But Griffith ain't Robert Baratheon. Griffith is Cersei. He's got this all figured out, right? And I feel like Griffith is smart enough. He's going to see through, like, if they're magically invited on this hunt, he's going to be like, oh, this sounds like maybe a trap. I don't know. These guys don't seem to like me. Seems like a very convenient way to try to off us. But I don't know if that even happens next episode. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. We need to talk about this episode, though, and go through it. But I really enjoyed this episode a lot. So we have, again, the idea that man has no control even over his own will. That it's one of these things, like, it's implying that men are going to act, a person's going to act the way that they're going to act. They don't necessarily have, it's like that nature versus nurture comment. What the opening is suggesting is that it's mostly nature. Like, sure, you can nurture something, but at the end of the day, how you're born is, sometimes you just can't control it. It's who you are. And that kind of relates to Guts, right? On the one hand, Guts has been nurtured in this environment and has changed over time. He's gotten to where he supports his soldiers. He believes in them. He's become a leader of them, which we see displayed wonderfully in this episode. But then there's that part of Guts inside of him that he can't control. That's just who he is. That impulsiveness, right? That impulsiveness to do and act his own way is not something that the nurturing has changed. And that's what Casca gets mad at, because she's like, why are you like this? And it's like, well, he can't help it, right? Did you not listen to the intro? We've been listening to it the last 8 weeks. And Guts just doesn't understand why she's so frustrated. But I mean, he doesn't like seeing her upset because she's one of his comrades. And just like, why does Griffith value you so much? And I wondered at that point if that was another incentive for Guts in this episode. He's tasked with a very important job. Like, this job he had to do, he had to help lead the soldiers over the river, get everything set up, lead the convince them to open the gate Trojan horse style, go into the castle, get it to where they could open the other gates, and then get it to where it was a secured entrance for Griffith and his men so they could all come in and raid the castle together. Like, that is an insane task for one person to do. And, you know, Casca questions at one point, well, why does Griffith trust Guts with this? And I'm like, because Guts will do anything for Griffith, and he's the most loyal person. He's like you, but he's more talented than you. Like, that's the basic answer. Is like, he's as loyal as Casca is, but he just has a little bit more ability. Sorry, this is how it is in the story. And so Casca's trying to figure that out, but then Guts is not only proving his worth because it's necessary for the team, but I feel that Guts is somewhat, you know, challenged by Casca's words, being why does Griffith value you so much? And Guts is like, I need to prove that to her. There is a reason he values me. I am competent. I promise. Here's what I can do. So I feel like it was kind of twofold. He was not only doing it for Guts, but also kind of doing it for Casca. And being like, I want to prove that I can do it. Conspiracy. I was wondering what the conspiracy was, and then at the very end, we get it with old Julius and Humpty Dumpty. We get the conspiracy at the very, very end. But yeah, the hawk up on the perch, right? The hawk on the perch. I love that Rickert is the falconer. I love it. I love that Rickert gets that job. Very nice. Like it a lot. I made a Yona of the Dawn reference with Golfin, but you know what? The mangaka for Yona of the Dawn and the mangaka for Berserk were really good friends. I'm seeing a Suwon Hawk and Griffith Guts comparison. You know, does that make Casca Yona? I don't know. Does it? It could. Wow, it could. It could very well if Casca turned out to be a princess, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. And so then we have everybody waiting in the mist to decide what to do, and they're waiting on the signal from Guts. This whole plot was absolutely genius. I was wondering, how are they going to get, I mean, I was thinking, you could build a raft and go to the other side, but that takes a ton of time, a lot of resources, and you could be discovered. And instead, they just decided to do something so easy, like string the ropes up, use a pulley system, pulley the horses across the river with the barrels and everything. Genius. With all of their weapons and everything. Genius. I'm so impressed by it. I'm also impressed, like, we need more shots of Guts without the armor. Like, them biceps, that torso, I'm like, I'm like, more of that, please. I was very happy with it. But Guts, like, his eyes were shining during these moments. Like, his eyes were shining. Like, he was so enamored and enthralled in the task that had been given to him. And he wanted to be proud and prove Griffith and Casca that he could do this. and it goes off without a hitch. Like, I was amazed at how succinctly and well the entire operation went. And a lot of that was Adon. A lot of that was Adon being like, we're fine, everything's cool. But yeah, there's so many pieces about this entire mission that if it went wrong, it would have just been a complete disaster. But they basically, Adon was so sure of himself and so sure of the castle and how they were safe. I loved it. Like, the commander's unusually alert today. He cannot help but be enthusiastic. And I love that everybody's just like, he's like in with all of them, right? He's like, Griffith put him in a big task. I like that we have a falconer on Guts' side as well. So good. I love the idea of using the falcon. It's great. And then he comes back and says, here's the signal. I thought that the whole idea of them, like, making a scene and making all the rebel rousing was a really smart move, too, because they don't get close enough where the cannons could fire at them. They don't just charge into battle, you know, willy-nilly. They wait and see what's going to happen. And it's really smart. I mean, it's a very smart strategy. On the one hand, you either draw the troops out and battle them, and while they're doing that, the people, Guts and them, can come in from within, and you've drawn out your main force, so then they can come in easier and make room for the crew to come through, and then also attack from behind the army that's already out there, so it would work. And if they turn around and say, oh, just ignore them, we're not going to fall for their trap, then it could still work. So, I mean, it was a win-win situation, but they handled it so well. And Adon was so sure of himself. He's like, oh, well, they figured out that we could trap them this way, so they're going to try to lure us out. So just ignore them. We're fine. And the moment they left, Adon's like, see, they gave up. They're going to go re-strategize. And it's like, nope, they were just buying time, making noise so that nobody was checking and nobody saw the horses come across, making noise and distracting so they could get on their horses, get their armor on, and get ready and be prepared for the next leg of the mission. It was done so well. I really, really love that. And so he's like, at first he's like, I'm going to tear them apart. And then he realizes, he's like, we'll just ignore them. And I love that shot of Guts with the horse, his arm over the horse and coming across with the sword. I love that he goes and gets his horse. Oh, Guts, I ain't kicking Guts out of bed for eating crackers. That's for sure. I think it's also noteworthy that his hand is still injured. His hand is not completely healed. I think that that's something that's important to note. I don't know if it's going to come back to that, if we're going to come back to his hand not being fully healed or not from the Zod incident, but it is not healed at this point. And so then Rickart's the one that says he's confirmed the raiders have crossed the river. So see, my whole thing was Rickard goes into battle with them, and I'm like, but why? I feel like Rickard would be such a liability because I don't know what weapons he has. I mean, he has the Falcon, but that's not really a weapon, so I'm very, very curious. And then Casca looks over and sees Guts there, and she stands atop the hill and, like, looks over there like she's thinking about something, right? Wondering, why does Griffith value you so much? And it's so funny. What's so funny is that Guts and Casca, they're both thinking the same thing about each other, and they just don't want to talk it out and figure out that you both are thinking the exact same thing. And it's like, you two just need to sit down. Casca needs to realize that Griffith trusts Guts because Guts will do whatever Griffith wants. And he puts value in Guts because of that, right? And Guts believes, you know, in Griffith the same way that Casca does. So they're really quite similar. Guts is just a little bit stronger than Casca. That's all. It's fascinating. And then they go from behind. Now, how they got the armor, I'm assuming that's what was in the barrels, were the armor and weapons. How they got the armor from the other side, I don't know. I don't know how they got the soldiers' armor, unless it was from, like, the battle. I guess it's from the battle earlier, where they battled them before and Adon left, when they were at the fort. I guess that's what it was. They were at the fort, and the one that Adon blew up, and they just took the armor from some of the soldiers there that had died to repurpose it. I'm guessing that was the case, because he dresses up and poses. I like Guts in the armor, but he poses saying, the general will be visiting the castle regarding an important operation, and he asks to come in. And they're like, oh, really? And they're like, I'll pass the information to your commander directly. And they're like, certainly. I'm like, they just open the doors wide arms. Oh, you randos, you're coming in to pass information? We're kind of in the middle of a fight, but okay, come on in. I mean, it makes sense because they weren't expecting it. It's not like they would expect somebody from the other side to come in. But then it's just like an assault. It is just like blood everywhere. And then Adon's like, what the hell is this? And so they go on after them. And that's when, what's so great about it is that they, at first, the one guy's like, do we give them the signal now and blow the horn? And Guts is like, no. We make sure that they have a way to come in first. Like, he wants to be secure that they have a safe way for Griffith to come in before they do anything. It's like, okay. And so, yeah, then they just like, we wait for the, and they're like, Griffith. He's like, we're going to wait for the signal. And Corcus is like, well, can't he be quick about it? I do like Corcus's like bird beak helmet. It looks like a crow, which is like Corcus and crow. It just looks like a crow's beak. It's really cool. And I love how Judo has the one feather coming out of his hat, and then Casca had to have two. She's like, I need one more than you. But yeah, he's like, can't he be quick about it? I wonder why he put so much faith in Guts. I'm like, girl, because Guts is gonna do it for Griffith. Guts is gaga for Griffith, and he's gonna do whatever it takes. Why did you open the gate? And that's when Guts like gets the men off the top of the tower that could have fired the arrows, and that's when he gives the signal. He wants to make sure there's nothing holding Griffith back. I love it, and that's when he says it. And Griffith's like, let's go quickly. And then they all go. I love that Rickard's just there. It's like, what? And then the sunlight shining over Griffith's head, like, come on. And then Adon's like, well, shit. The little thing, the helmet that Adon puts off, it makes him look like I don't know about Shogun Warrior, but it makes him look like a Blastoise or a Seadra, something. It makes him look ridiculous. I mean, I know it's supposed to look badass, but when you know it's Adon, I guess it's supposed to be a dragon, but when you know it's Adon, it's like, really? And then it is just blood and guts everywhere. So as far as like them all fighting, we've seen Guts fighting throughout this. We know about Griffith fighting. Griffith takes the sword out. Judo has the knives and like aims for the jugular instantly. Corcus like takes the sword. Pippin like has a damn mace and just knocks somebody's head off. And we see Casca using her sword. But then we don't see Rickard doing anything. So I'm curious what Rickard does in all of this. But I guess it doesn't matter. And then I'm sorry. The scene where Guts and Griffith look at each other and like eye fuck from across the battlefield. It looked like a video game cutscene. Like where they're just like, hey bae, you made it. I know. Like just what the hell? Them looking across from one another. Like, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, these two. I'm like, if you don't ship them, then you clearly have not put on shipping goggles before because it's pretty obvious. And then, yeah, everybody starts. I like the one knight that hits the wall with the knife that Judo threw him and he just like cobbles down. His like head bobbles on the way down against the wall. My favorite part about this episode, though, is that everybody all comes back together. They're just slicing through people. There's blood everywhere. And then Adon convinces the rest of his men, he's like, we should retreat. I don't blame his men for being like, yep, let's go. Like, I was like, I wouldn't stick around. If I was on Adon's side and I saw this and Adon's like, let's go. And they're like, yes, we need to get out of here now. We're not going to die on this place. No. And of course he has the family heirloom raft, right? I'm always prepared. And his soldiers are like, take us with you. And he's like, well, take off your armor. Don't be outrageous. It's like, take off your armor and swim. So I guess a group of them get away. But the part that gets me so much is that there's like all of these dead bodies everywhere. There's like blood and gore everywhere. And then you cut to Griffith and Guts. And Guts gets off his horse, looks over to Griffith, like sword in his arm. Like Griffith's armor is covered in blood. And Griffith's just like smiling like, you did well, dude. And Guts is like, well, I just followed your orders. And everybody's just like, aw. It's like, in any other circumstance, in any other circumstance, it'd be like Guts and Griffith, like the gang's all here. The band of Nakama are like all around. Rickard's there. Like everybody's just so happy in this moment. And it's just like power of the Nakama. And there's just like a mound of corpses everywhere around them, right? Everywhere around them. And again, there's that callback to Griffith saying, you did a good job. And he's like, I just did what you told me to. Meaning like, you know, Griffith planned it all out and it happened by Griffith's design. Furthering why the men follow him. I'm just like, and then one guy was going to fire an arrow at one of them, right? And that's when Judo noticed. Judo noticed and shot the knife to stop him. And that was it. And they're like, And they're like, oh, look at that. I almost feel like a laugh track should be playing when they say, we did it. I find it curious that Judo noticed the guy and nobody else did. Judo's been really good at noticing things that have popped up before anybody else. And I don't know if he has like a sixth sense, if he has really good hearing, but he seems to have noticed things that nobody else possibly noticed in the moment. So I'm curious, right? Again, I'm a little suspicious of Judo, but he still fascinates me regardless. So then we go past this sandstorm to Boscone, and Boscone is not happy. He's like, what happened to the fort? He's like, you just abandoned it, right? And Adon's like, oh, well, we didn't have a choice. He's like, they took it by force. And like the Boscone, I thought Boscone was going to kill him. I thought Boscone was going to be like, this is it. This is your last warning. But no, he says this is the last time. So this is officially the last warning. The last time I support you. Boscone's interesting. We've not seen a lot of him. But he says a warrior must always follow the principles of honor and justice. So that's interesting. That is distinctly different from Julius. Because at the end of this, Julius, who is a general, Julius says that he's all for like using manipulation and deception and firing poison arrows behind the backs of others. That doesn't seem to be Boscone's take. Boscone's like, I'm a warrior. We have principles. There's a code that we follow, and he's going to follow it. But you can tell he doesn't like Adon at all because Adon's a coward. So interesting. Yeah, Boscone and Julius's principles seem to be totally opposite each other. So, and we know Boscone's working for this general that is with the Tudors. So I'm curious to see what we get out of that. What Boscone is going to do in this story. I'm kind of fascinated. And then Adon's like, well, we have this whole thing passed down from the family for 500 years. And the troops are like, it's 500 now. So then we cut back to the chapel, right? We cut back to the chapel. And everybody's there as Griffith gets his counthood given to him. Title of count bestowed upon thee. Place thy flesh and heart in heaven. So, okay. There is a group of men standing here. We have this man with a beard and reddish hair. I don't know if he's a cousin, if he's related to the queen. I don't know who he is. Then the little boy. Now, the little boy, he said, my only daughter is Charlotte. So I'm like, the little boy is either the son of the man to the far left that we don't know of, the son of Julius, or the son of the king. He didn't say my only child. He said my only daughter was Charlotte. So the little boy could very well be the king's son, or it could be Julius's son. Could be that one guy's son that's like a cousin. We don't exactly know yet. We don't exactly know. But then we see the queen, and then we see Charlotte, right? And then we see Humpty Dumpty. So yeah, be valiant with due justice, advance the war. Stand prepared for thy foe, and do thirst for battle, and fear not. The queen looks a bit shady. The queen has like, you know, the stereotypical, it looks like a snake's head, but it's like the stereotypical, you know, thing on her head. She looks very pretty, but also very like snooty. Like she's not to be trifled with, the queen does. I'm very curious. And then poor Charlotte, she has her hair down. She's so pretty. Her hair is the same color as Julius's, as her uncle's. She seems too innocent for this world, right? She's far too innocent for this world. And I'm sure that Griffith is like, you know, now that I'm a count, I could technically marry you. So we'll get that in line so I can get up here in the kingdom, right? And then, yeah, everybody's like, duly appointed count of our glorious kingdom of Midland. Mm-hmm. I like the castle thing has the sun and moon on it and lightning. So then Julius is walking around when he comes across Humpty Dumpty. He's like, he's become a count. And so then we have the three ladies gossiping, like the maids gossiping out back about everything. They're like, Sir Griffith was awarded the title of count. And like, oh, I heard that too. He's so handsome. I'm jealous because he's so attractive and more graceful than any woman. Yeah. It's hard, you know. And then they say not only that, he's the greatest swordsman in the kingdom and commands the strongest army, which grinds Julius's gears, because for Julius, he's one of the greatest swordsmen, I'm sure. And the White Dragon army is the greatest army in Midlands. So for this upstart commoner who's the leader of a mercenary group to suddenly come out of nowhere, I'm sure Julius hates that. I'm sure he's like, what the fudge are you talking about? No. And so you can tell he's aggravated. He's far more classy than those awkward nobles, and he has so much presence and elegance. True, Griffith handles himself and has handled himself since day one like he's been working towards a kinghood. He's been being gracious and gentlemanly for a reason. Compared to him, those court ministers are rude and rough. And then what did they say here? I missed this because I was focused on Julius. The poor officials just can't compare to Sir Griffith. And yeah, Julius is jealous. And he gets upset and angry that they're just so gaga over Griffith. And that's when he tells them to shut up. And that's when the Humpty Dumpty guy comes in. And like I said, I feel like Humpty Dumpty is upset because Griffith is a threat to everything they're doing on the court, whether they're corrupting it or whatever. I don't feel like Julius is involved in the corruption. I feel like Julius is pretty simple-minded. But Julius is very emotional and prone to be prodded at. And I feel like that just, is something that can be easily manipulated by people like Humpty Dumpty here, right? Mm-hmm. And he makes the comment about how the king's escort is going to possibly be the Band of the Hawk this year, which Julius is upset by because it's like, oh no, the White Dragon army always gets the invite to the hunt. What are these guys? They can't just do that. He's like, this is important. It allows the king to promote friendly relations between all the feudal lords. He's like, our best knights, the White Dragons, are the only ones allowed to serve. So basically, he's got this privilege all these years, and now this upstart commoners come in and wooed the king. He doesn't know how or why, but he's mad about it. And, the king seems pretty progressive, so maybe it's just the fact that Griffith is so different than what he's dealt with his whole time here that he's attracted to it. We made the comparison of him and a character from Monster last episode, and I think that still serves well. And so I like that Humpty Dumpty's like, look, this is just a rumor, but then it's like, why'd you bring it up? And he's like, but, there is no sign the disturbances of war will subside soon. So therefore, that young man will keep winning honors through his military exploits. He's like, the war isn't ending anytime soon. And because of that, he's going to keep rising up through the ranks because of his military, strategies and military accolades. He's like, we can't afford that. His Majesty highly values the boy, and I don't know how he's won His Majesty's favor, but things could go badly. That boy could become a general. And Julius is like, no, he won't be as good as me. And I'm like, so it's like, yeah, a lot of it is Julius projecting his insecurities on the situation, that he's afraid this upstart who's handsome and talented and has the town's favor is suddenly going to be a possible replacement for him. And I'm like, if he marries Charlotte, then yeah, for sure, he's definitely going to replace you. So the man of common origins wouldn't be on the same level as me. And again, that goes back to the very beginning of the episode, the very beginning of all of these episodes. The idea that Julius is like a commoner cannot be on the same level as a court general. It's the idea of, who has control. Is it the gods or is it the law? Because, if you think of it this way, Julius kind of represents like the gods in this situation, and Griffith kind of represents the law. Like, he's just rising through the ranks strategically and objectively, whereas Julius believes by right and privilege that he has more power than Griffith does. But does he? I don't know. I'm wondering if Griffith and Julius will eventually fight. I feel like that Griffith is going to like marry Charlotte and then have a damn coup and kill everybody and just get them all out of there and then be like, I'm king. Ha, I did it. You know, I don't know. As much as Griffith said he's not afraid to use force to get what he wants, and if, you know, if by chance Julius goes against him and stands as a hurdle, it could get bloody indeed. So yeah, I just like the idea that Griffith's trying to kind of upend the prophecy that man cannot control his fate or whatever, and Griffith's trying to seemingly undo that by rising the ranks in this situation. And then that's when Humpty Dumpty is like, oh no, but what if a stray arrow that was poisoned, meant for a beast, just happens to hit Griffith? What would happen? And it's like, he has to say it like 3 times for Julius to get the drift. He's like, do you get what I'm saying, Julius? Do you get it? And Julius is like, oh, we'll accidentally hit Griffith and poison him in the woods. Now we know that's not going to happen, but what if it goes opposite direction? What if they get out in the woods and Julius ends up poisoned by the arrow? What if the king ends up poisoned? I don't think it'll be the king, because I feel like Griffith has to rise enough through the ranks. I feel like Griffith has to get to the rank of general before the king dies. I feel like the king is going to stay alive. He's going to stay alive until Griffith rises through the ranks and becomes a general, and then we're going to have our coup d'etat. But I feel like in the next episode, who's to say that Julius doesn't get hit by the arrow and die on accident? Who's to say? Who's to say that one of our companions, I mean, obviously it's not Guts, he's in the first episode, but Casca could get hit, Rickard could get hit, Quarkus could get hit. I don't think Quarkus will, because I feel like Quarkus's plot to kill Guts has not gone away. We still need that. But Pippin could die. We haven't had much with Pippin's plot in this, so I don't know, but I feel like they're going to try to get them now to come on the hunt and try to kill them off while they're on there, and it's going to backfire on them somehow. I just don't know what will happen. So, but yeah. In the meantime, I'm super excited, y'all. I cannot wait to see what we find out with these episodes, but it's crazy, y'all. It's absolutely crazy, and I can't wait. So, yeah. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I'm excited to hear your comments down below, but I'll be back very soon with more talk about Monster. Bye.